Up now is Michael Smith, an independent consultant with over 25 years of experience in the IT security and intelligence fields, performing roles in management, engineering, software development, auditing, incident response, and threat intelligence. I will also add that in VetSec, he is a wealth of information on cybersecurity, entrepreneurship, investing, the Russian language, life in Singapore, and the latest loaf of sourdough baked by his wife, and much more. Presenting before the interview Recce for job seekers is Michael Smith.
Why, thank you. Don't oversell it though, because now we have to deliver. So hi everybody. I'm Mike. You know that. Um, by recce, what I mean is doing reconnaissance on an employer, and there are a variety of reasons. I'll get into that. But I realized earlier this year that I do stuff differently. I do many things differently. And one of the things that I do differently is that I prepare for interviews by doing a lot of reconnaissance on whoever it is that I'm going to actually interview with. Um, because I think at the senior levels, you need to have some of that knowledge to be able to actually solve the problems that they have. And then you turn around and bring that out on the interview, right? It's just interview preparation. Now, let me get into who I am. So I run my own business. I'm an independent consultant. That's just from the beginning of this year. I have a lot of background in LAMP stack programming, FISMA, GRC type stuff, security engineering, systems development. I spent the past 5 years as a free range CTO, lived in Asia for 3 years, was 75% travel for a couple of years. Okay. So occasionally I know some stuff. And I think as the more senior you get inside of an organization, the more you're expected to understand what their business drivers are and understand what their problems are before you even show up for the job. Where at the lower levels, the entry level for an interview, it's more of, do you know how to run Splunk? Okay. And so what I together for, it's more of a demo, but it's to show you how to take some of the things that we do in security, doing OSINT for, say, penetration testing, and turn around and recycle that into how do I actually use this to get a better job. Okay. So that was me. You saw that. I dress up occasionally sometimes. It shocks people when I wear a suit and a tie. If they've known me, they just get shocked. So I wrote a LinkedIn how-to guide on the VetSec Slack. Read it, use it. If you don't have access to it, just drop me a message. I'll get it to you. Okay. It's also on the VetSec blog. But let's take back earlier this year. So back in January, I went in, had a meeting with my boss and his boss, and they said, hey, we're going to lay you off. Here's a big bag of money. Go the fuck away. Okay. The nicest ever been to me while they were being mean, but that's okay. However, out of that, I did a couple things. And one of those things was I found myself on the job market and I'm applying to jobs, but mostly trying to network to figure out who it is that I know and who's actually looking for somebody that's like me. One of the things during that period that I started doing was I started writing a class for EC Council for their learning platform because they needed some content. They came to me and said, hey, since we know that you have this background in web and internet infrastructure, could you do a reconnaissance class for us? So I said, yeah, no problem. So I'm sitting down and I'm doing, the basic stuff. Let's start with Google. Let's go to LinkedIn trolling. Let's pull up information on DNS. Let's start doing some light scanning, network scanning and things like that. Then, eventually we get to some particular types of server technology and then what to do when you're on the inside of a network for reconnaissance, right? It's kind of an intro step to the other stuff. But I did that at the same time that I was out interviewing with companies. And it just put this idea in my brain of, well, how about if I have a company that I'm interviewing with, could I just go do reconnaissance on them to find out what they're doing and what their pain points are. I did it in several interviews, and it went over phenomenally well. Okay. Now, normally when we think of OSINT, so OSINT is open source intelligence. It's basically looking at public materials to find out things. Okay. So we use a lot in penetration testing. It's step 2 of penetration testing. Step 1 is get a letter that tells you what you're allowed to test. But we use it in penetration testing. We use it in audits and assessments to know what to fix. We use it in incident investigations where you followed the breadcrumbs to find out who the criminal is. Okay? You use it in threat intelligence, so finding out new tools. I built a whole system many years ago to take news results off Google News, so that finally gets spidered by Google, and I'll take all of those for particular attack groups, for particular countries, looking for anything that was hacked, defaced, all of that stuff. And I'll show you what those look like. And feed those into kind of a threat assessment globally on who is doing what out in the world, right? So like if I wanted to say, okay, I'm going to the Philippines next week, what incidents have happened in the Philippines? Right? So I go look and say, oh, okay, there was this defacement, this hacking attack, all of that stuff. And then I could go in and I could talk with policymakers, governments, cybersecurity agency, and say, okay, these are the things that are an issue, and here's how we can actually go help with that. Okay. I taught some of my sales teams how to do this. So when you go in and you have a prospective customer, instead of coming in and what we call show up and throw up, right? Which is, here we are, here's our slides that the product marketing guys have. Here's feature A, feature B, feature C. It's, oh, hey, I saw you guys were in the news last week about this incident. Is this something that you want to talk about, right? Oh, I saw that, in your SEC filing, so the Securities and Exchange Commission filing, you had risks around cybersecurity. Can I explain to you how we would fit into your security program? It makes for a much better conversation than, here I am, here's my resume, let's go. You use it for troubleshooting. A lot of OSINT stuff is just troubleshooting. Like, who's the authoritative DNS server for our domain, right? Are we split out across multiple providers? And then the last one is just general mayhem, right? I forgot doxing people, it's in there. But dropping people's information in public to shame them or whatever. And then just general mayhem, because any kind of attack starts from doing reconnaissance, right? And in a way, when you go in and you apply for a job, you get somebody to backdoor you into a job, or you come to interview, it's a social engineering attack against the organization in order for them to get you a job, okay? So why do you recon? Number one, I get nervous, okay? I've talked to millions of people over the years. I'm 47 years old. I've been in this career field forever. I still get nervous going into an interview if I don't know who I'm talking to, what it is that they're looking for, and what the organization does. So the more that I can prepare myself, the better of an interview that I will have. Okay. Number two, understand if you want to work for the company. There are lots of companies out there that are looking to hire people, and they're just complete dumpster fires, and you don't want to work for them. Okay. All organizations have problems. You just want to avoid the ones where the job becomes a death march. Okay. And then the last one is, if you understand the company, understand the security problems they have, understand what they're trying to accomplish, then you're already doing the security job. And if they realize that, if they realize that and they get mad, you don't want to work there anyway. B, if they realize that and they understand that you're already doing the job, they're much more likely to hire you. Okay. Now, there's a bunch of different sources. I'll take you all through all these. Time to switch to a demo. I'm just going to do a reconnaissance on Tesla. This might be relevant to somebody in the audience. Let's see. I have had a couple people just in the past 2 or 3 months that have asked me to help them backdoor them into Tesla, automobile manufacturer. They make batteries, they make electric cars. What happens if you want a job with them, right? How do you go recon them? And the first thing you do is you go to their website, okay? Obviously, duh. You want to find a couple things. One is, what's their mission? What do they do? Right? How do they describe what they do? The second one is, what locations do they have? And the third one is, who's their CEO? What's their executive team? Now, usually that will be in a couple places. The first one is up here in kind of a menu bar thing. In this case, this is all like the sales stuff, so it's not there. But if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see a couple things here. One is this Tesla at 2020 is a link. So we take that and it gives us to, here's the history of the company. Here's what they're doing. Here's what they think is important. Okay. Read that. I have to scroll. There is careers. We'll get to careers. Locations, specifically to Tesla, it gives me all of the stores. It gives me stores and, but you see all of the different locations. You start looking, find what are the locations around you. Okay. And then there's one more, which is, I think it's here. Yeah, the about. There's a piece in here that is who their executive team is. They usually have an executive team page. I can't find it right now. But, understand who the CEO is, the CFO, the CIO, the CISO, if they have them. They usually don't have them listed. But file that away in your knowledge base for things that are of interest to you that you might need later. The second thing that you do is you use the Googles, okay? So if you are a public company in the US, you file something called a 10Q, okay? There are other versions. There might be a 10K if you can't find information on the 10Q, but usually the 10Q has what you're looking for. In this case, it's all public record. They're obligated to post it publicly, and you can view HTML, and you're going to search for one thing. Where's that? Find risk. Okay. Because inside of their 10Q is their annual or quarterly filing that says basically, here's what we do as a company, here's how much money we made, blah, 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 blah. They have a section called risks. And the risks section tells you these are the bad things that could happen where we don't make our financial numbers for the next quarter, the next year, the next 2 years. Okay. And you see right here, risk factors. And you could see all of these. We may be affected by COVID-19. Some of these are really kind of meta things or macroeconomic situations. But it helps you understand their thinking, because as a security person, we mitigate risk. Okay? And it'll get into this. So here's COVID. Here is delays in development, either R&D or in design or producing. Here's sales delivery. We might not be able to meet our plan. Here's customers might not accept electric vehicles. Some of our suppliers are single source suppliers, which means that supply chain and supply chain security is an important thing for Tesla. That borders on IT security. Okay. Any delays in expanding their factory, projected timelines, like this thing goes on for quite a while. But dig through it and find anything that's information security related and file that away, because that's something that probably the job that they're hiring is related to some of these risks. Okay. Here, I love this one too. This is Tesla. We're highly dependent on our chief executive officer. Okay. But get the 10Q, read it, understand it, at least read this risk section. Okay. The next thing is just a couple searches that I look for. Site says only show me results for the site, or in this case, because I give it the domain, only show me results inside of that domain. And I'm looking anything looking for anything that's a login, an account, a reset. And so I get, here's the reset your password function. Okay. So it's all under /user, right? So there's your password reset. Here's your account login, different things like that. I'm basically looking for, where do they have a public facing website for their customers to log in and check status? And then I'll mouse around a little bit and say, okay, what's the functionality of that site? What does it do? How is it built? Which we'll get to in just a second. Okay. The reset your password looks like that. You can see they've got a CAPTCHA thing there. It's a typical password reset. There might be some attack surface associated with that. Okay, but at least you know what kind of web functions they have for their users, for their customers. This one, I don't need that whole thing there. But this is anything that's Tesla that deals with developers. And the reason that I want that is because I'm looking for APIs. And you'll see some people complaining. There's people complaining about APIs. They should provide an API with OAuth. A lot of times you'll end up with an API. They'll have tools that you can download to connect to their APIs to pull data out of their platform, understand what languages those are written in, understand where the APIs are actually hosted at. That gives you an advantage, especially if you're a web application security guy. Okay? I have this huge crazy thing, which is basically a big, huge OR, right? So the pipe is a logical OR, and then the parentheses group it. But this is all of the bad things that could happen to a company. So they could get defaced, they could have money mules, so that's some kind of fraud. Phishing, they could get their site phished. They could get hacked. They could have hacktivist attacks. They could have a hijack, DDoS, basically all the bad stuff that could happen to a company, with one thing, which is minus means don't show me results. And so I always put hack to death because you'll end up with all sorts of bad stuff. But what this is will give me the history. Have they had any successful publicly disclosed hacking attempts against anything that they own? And what you'll see here is somebody gained control over the fleet, but he's a good guy. So, okay, they're doing some vehicle security stuff, obviously, and they've got some kind of, white hat security engineering guys actually digging into the security of their cars. Okay, here's a hacking plot from August. Somebody offered an employee $100 million bribe. That would mean to me that they have a higher risk of insider threat. So maybe that resonates a little bit better. Here they have a hacking competition. So they have a bug bounty thing going on. That's interesting to me. They had an hour-long network outage. Here's a career. They're looking for a security engineer. Here's a, never a good thing to be on Schneier. But you can kind of dig, here's a ransomware attack, right? It's all this stuff. You can understand what problems they have, understanding what incidents they've had, because they usually hire people to solve problems that they've had incidents with. That's how hiring works. Okay. Next one, I'll go to built with. You could easily run a different tool. There are command line tools you can use to run to hit these things. I just like built with because it's a web application, so you can always pull it up from someplace and run it. In this case, you just go, it's just builtwith.com, put in the site you want to look up, and then it will give you, I go to the detailed technology profile. So here's all they have for analytics widgets. These are just website JavaScript widgets. There, I'll make it bigger. Okay. JavaScript widgets that they've got, tag managers, languages that they support, frameworks get interesting. So they run PHP 7, just regular generic PHP, Python, what they have for mobile stuff, what they have for content and delivery, payment systems, right? Audio, video, media. So they've got Vimeo for that. Content management system, which is very important for me. So they're running Drupal. You got all these weird JavaScript libraries, jQuery, the usual stuff there. Careers, here's what runs that. But basically, you can scroll this thing down, find the technologies that are interesting to you, flag those, and then highlight those in the resume you submit to them. But also on interviews, highlight the skills you have that match the technology that they have. The next place that I'll go is DNS. And this one I actually pulled up already. So this is DNS Dumpster, which is a horrible name, but it is what it is. It dumps the DNS for that particular domain. So in this case, I did a search results for Tesla, tesla.com. For DNS servers, they use Ultra DNS, okay, owned by Neustar. They use Akamai, owned by Akamai. So that tells me, okay, they use two different large DNS, authoritative DNS providers. So they've got pretty good disparity, or not disparity, but distribution there. They're pretty good there as far as risk. Their MX records point to Mimecast. So Mimecast is a spam filtering company. You'll also see, so MX records are your mail exchange. That's who receives email for your domain. In this case, it's Mimecast. You might see something.outlook.com. That means that they use Office 365. Office 365 also implies, all of the ecosystem around securing Office 365. You might see something mx.google.com. That means that they use G Suite. So you would expect, Google Drive. You would expect some of the client-side controls that G Suite has built into it, right? So those are two competing flavors between Office 365 and G Suite. Okay, helps you understand what you're looking at. Text records, sometimes you can find some things. Here you've got a SPF for Outlook.com. So that means that they probably forward their mail from Mimecast to Outlook. So they use Office 365. They also use Zendesk here for managing either their own assets or their customers. A bunch of other stuff in here. I saw the Adobe verification, Zapier. And then there's a bunch of host names, right? But the ones that I really want out of there, MX records, because they imply some kind of Office suite, some kind of email that's behind it, and then who their authoritative name servers are. Okay? The next place I check is to LinkedIn itself. And I'll just do a search for the company. So this is the company page for Tesla, right? Not a big surprise. It tells me they have 35,000 employees. Gives me locations of where they live. And I'll zoom in a little bit here, maybe. Okay. Locations of where they live, where they went to school, meh. But then here's a whole bunch of people. But I can do things like, right, so I live in Massachusetts, so I want to just look for, Boston. Show me how many people do they have in Boston, right? That takes me down to 476 people inside of Boston. That's a pretty small population for me to go research who these people are. Are any of them security? Okay, so I can also do something like security, right? So I can go in and filter a little bit more. And now I'm down to 476, okay? I can get rid of Boston. Okay, so they have a total of 2,000 employees doing security. And I can go down through these and see, okay, here's an information security leader, security engineering, global security professional. 2,000 people in a security team is a lot. Okay? So that gives me a little bit of information on what's the flavor that I could expect for a security team. So if I go work in the security team, it's not a 5-person shop where I have to do, job A, job B, job C. I probably have a very small niche that I'm going to be doing, and I'm not going to get a lot of variety in my job. Okay. But you can also get a lot of what their skills are. Okay. You can go pick a couple people, especially if you find ones that are in your area. And then, like, let's pick on Michael here. I'm going to scroll down here, look through his background. Okay, so he's been there a little while. So investigations, security management. So he probably runs an incident response team, right? And then where has he worked? Okay, so he comes from the legal side of things, and law enforcement, where he went to school, all of this stuff. Now, if I have to go do an interview, I sometimes in advance, they'll tell me who I'm interviewing with. I can just go search for them inside of Tesla, right? So I'll go like this. I'll just go Michael Marty, Tesla. Okay. And you'll see, oh yeah, here he is. Now, if I can go research the people that I'm going to be interviewing with, I know exactly who they are. I know what background they have. I know if I have anything in common with them, right? So I also look at this one here, which is mutual connections. So, okay, so he knows Tim Williams. Well, everybody knows Tim Williams. And he knows Tom Brennan. A lot of people know Tom Brennan. If it's somebody that I know really well, that's a mutual connection, then I might go talk to them and say, hey, this guy, I'm interviewing with him. Is he okay? Is there anything that I should bring up? Can you talk to them, just throw them a quick message to let them know that, I'm an okay guy. And that helps out a lot, right? So that's how I kind of work that. So let's just go back to here. I just put in Tesla. Okay. And then it takes me back to the company page, right? Another thing that I'll do is I'll go look at jobs. Okay. You know what? I know a lot of stuff, but see this, they're hiring a lot of security people, right? Show me all jobs here. So here's a security manager in Austin, security engineer for manufacturing, platform security, IAM, technical investigator. I can basically look at all of the different security jobs they have. I didn't even have to search by security. A lot of times you have to go up here and search for, security like that. Okay. But these are all the jobs that they're hiring. I'll look at titles and I'll look at locations, right? So here's one in Germany. There you go, B. Platform security. Understand the title and where it's at. Okay. Also, look over here and find jobs that are similar to you. Say maybe I want to look at FleetNet. Okay, that sounds kind of cool. But look at the requirements here, and you'll see cloud security, Kubernetes, web application development, Go and Ruby, full stack. Okay. Encryption with encryption at rest, TLS hashing. So I kind of get an idea. They're doing development in Go and Ruby. They probably run some stuff on Kubernetes. They said cloud security, so it's probably like an AWS type thing. I have a pretty good start on a technology stack that they're running and what kind of developers they hire without even walking in the door. I can kind of guess what things are important to them. Okay. And if I do this for a handful, here's an information system security engineer, I can do the same thing. So they're looking at physical security systems, real estate, let's see, low voltage electrical systems, video management, right? So that's like the physical security person that supports all of the, or the IT security person, security stuff, right? So they're setting up cameras, They're managing door control systems, things like that. Okay? But if I do enough of these, I kind of get an idea as an organization, what total skills are they looking for and what are things that I might want to highlight. The other thing that I'll do is I'll go in and search. So I just look for Tesla here, but instead of clicking through to Tesla as a company, I'll go in and look under people. Okay, so you just go here to search, right? And then you hit the people, right? The people that comes in, and then I'll go connections and say first and second. What that will show me is people that I know or that know somebody that I know that's inside of the organization. Okay? So in this case, Dimitri, he's a good friend of mine. You'll see others. I think some people know Christine. But these are people that I know. I'll take a look here when their name comes up. Look down here. It'll show me how many people do I know that know that person, if they're a second degree connection. And those are people that I drop a message to and say, hey, I am submitting my resume to Tesla. You know this person. Do you know them well enough to forward my resume to them? Okay. And if the answer is yes, then basically you've went around this application tracking system, which is this horrible thing, especially if the person you know can hand your resume directly to the hiring manager. Okay. I actually did that for somebody. Let me check all the participants here. Yeah, so I did that for somebody just maybe a month ago, and gave their resume to the hiring manager, turned back around in a day and said, wow, their resume is great. They probably should expect a call from the recruiters. Okay. And they've already gone through the interview process. Okay. Waiting for the next round of things. But that helps you get in through the back door, which is always better than going in through this heartless ATS system. Okay. So I'll look for things like that. When I'm interviewing with somebody, so if I go to talk to Christine, I'll go in, I'll say, okay, who did she know? She knows Chris, Karen, a couple other people. Okay. Oh, I know Darren. Okay, I know him. I know him. But these are people who know Christine that I can go ask and say, hey, is Christine okay? Like, or is it a good place to work? Sometimes you'll end up with people that don't work for the company anymore. I'll have to, Tesla is hard to find some, but you'll find people that, maybe 2 or 3 jobs ago they worked there. Those are good people to message to say, hey, you worked there. What was the environment like? Was it a good job? Did you like it? Why did you leave? Okay. Did they treat their people okay? Was it exciting work? Was, what did you like? What didn't you like? Why did you leave? Okay. And you get kind of this opinion on the company. Another way to get opinions on the company is to go to this place. This is Glassdoor. I lived in Singapore for 3 years. I had a saying when I lived there, and that was, you could give people free noodles and they still would complain about them. And I think that also applies to Glassdoor. The cool thing about Glassdoor, if you hit the companies tab and then you just look up Tesla, maybe if my web browser decides to play. No, it doesn't want to play today. Oh yeah, no, it does. Okay. Companies. And then, okay, but put in the company here and you can actually get reviews of the company. Okay, come on, play along. Yes, thank you. Okay. I did not sacrifice a chicken to the live demo gods. Okay, once you get to this page, this is the hard one. Look at reviews. Okay, And you can see all of these. These are reviews of the company, what employees think. And you can get, they've got pros, they've got cons. I'll flip through these. I'll look at their overall rating. So overall rating of 3.5. Okay, that's pretty low for a tech company. You know, show me some of the bad people that don't like it here, right? Cons, not organized. It's not organized. We've got too many people. We're packed in. We don't have enough space. Um, some of the early people made a lot of money, but now we're just a cog in a machine. Blah, blah, blah. This one's very opinionated, goes on forever and ever. You've got some people that absolutely love it, some people that absolutely hate it. Take all of it with a grain of salt because people have different opinions. But at least gives you an idea on, are you going into some place that has a burnout culture? Are you going into some place where everybody hates the CEO? Are you going into some place that has middle management issues? Are you going to a place that has crazy rapid growth? A lot of that you'll get out of company reviews and Glassdoor. Okay? One caveat on Glassdoor, they do have salaries. So you can see what people by title, by location earn. These have been debunked a lot. It's like the average salaries are maybe 5 years out of date. Okay, so they're probably a little bit more than what Glassdoor tells you. So don't just think that that's what you're going to get. Okay, so just be careful with that. But it does at least kind of give you a range and something to think about depending on job title. Okay, that helps you out immensely because that's one of the biggest things that you need when you're looking for a job is, hey, I have no idea how much to charge for my time, for my services, right? At least do a little bit of market research. You can also do in Glassdoor, you can just do market research by geographic area, any company, how much do people get paid? And you can do some market research to kind of understand what your price is on the market. Okay. And then the last place that I'll go, especially for startups, is Crunchbase. Okay. So Crunchbase, it's just crunchbase.com. It's a little bit special to find stuff. It tries to push you into the paid version. When you finally get to a company page, it will tell you some stuff. Okay. So it'll give you where their headquarters is, their date of founding. You somewhere in here you'll get like, here's all of the leadership team. Okay, that's interesting. Their financials here. But when did they get funding? Okay. So it goes all the way down to your 2017 post-IPO debt, all the way into the current. So you can actually see how much money did they raise at various times. And that will help you understand, like, how fast are they growing? Are they spending a lot of time getting investment to burn through it like Tesla is? Or did they just get one seed round in a Class A or a Series A round of funding for, you know, say $10 million, and then they haven't gotten anything since? And it seems like they're growing pretty well. That's a well-managed company. They've got a profit. They're growing. They're hiring people. Maybe that's a company that you'd be interested in. It'll also tell you like total number of people. Like you can get a bunch of different stuff out of it. The technology tab is crap. It tries to do what Built With does, but it's all for pay. So I just use these three, right? So the summary, the financials, and the people. This is interesting. This is news releases for the company. Now, most of these aren't going to be related at all to working there, but at least, you know, read the last dozen of them to kind of get an idea of what are the things that they're working on, what are the things that they've released, because if it's important enough to put into a press release, there's probably some kind of security activity associated with it. Okay. And that's what I've got, folks. Does anybody have any questions? and it's all quiet. And I lost folks. Okay. So like normally when I go into an interview, let me flip back to normally when I go into an interview, and I've done this with companies before, sometimes you have to decide, like, do you want to tell them openly that you research their company, right? For me at my level, I usually do at some point during the interview and said, oh, you know what, like, I've got my list of things that I want to talk about. So number one, it looks like you've got a staff of around 50 information security people, but half of them look like they're dual hatted between yourself and the parent company. Okay. So, what's going on with that? Come to find out there's a kind of a transition, and they bought another company that they brought on. So it's kind of a acquisition, and they're trying to get that sorted out. Okay. So that's interesting for me running a security team like that. Other things like, I didn't notice that you had any security operations people, or anybody that looks like they're security operations inside of the company. Are you using a managed security service provider? If so, who? Do you like the service? Like, we turn it down this whole like MSSP conversation. And that's all because I checked LinkedIn. They didn't have any SOC employees. Okay. I see that the company is using Office 365. Are you using two-factor on that? Have you gone through the CIS controls on how to set up Office 365? Is that an area that you're concerned about? Okay. If you are, well, then let's talk about it. Right. It's like things like that. I see yourself. So the person who's interviewing me. So you've been here 2 years. What do you think of the organization? What are you looking for to augment your skills? Right. Because you're my hiring manager. So what things are you good at, and what things are just getting dropped on the floor right now that you need somebody to pick up? And is there a spot where I can help you out? Okay. I see that your website is hosted on HubSpot. HubSpot is like a customer relationship management platform. And so that's an interesting thing for me, because that means that your website is focused around lead generation and getting people into a pipeline as customers. But where are all the other functions and kind of the dynamic pieces of the website that I would expect to see? So like a user's portal, the APIs, things like that. Where are those at? Because I couldn't actually find those. Okay. I see you have APIs, like how many developers do you have? What kind of a security development program do you have? There are lots of different questions that I can have, but it's a lot better than you go into an interview and you kind of stare at each other and they're like, so do you have any questions? And you go, well, I don't know. At least have 3 or 4 questions like that are things that where your reconnaissance didn't happen. Sometimes it's not about the question that you ask. It's about asking a question that shows that you did reconnaissance on the company and you understand how they function a little bit, but that there was a gap that you just couldn't figure out. Okay. People like it when you're engaged with their company and interested in what they're doing. Okay. And with that, that is all that I have for material, folks. Thank you for your time.